My name's Connor, and I'm 36 years old now. You're probably wondering what's got me writing all this down. Honestly, I'm still not sure, but here we are. If you'd told me 5 years ago that I'd be sitting here, venting about my failed marriage, I would have laughed in your face. Back then, Lena and I were inseparable. We were that couple, like the ones you see in the movies. You know, the high school sweethearts who grew up together, grew old together. Or at least that's what I thought. I met Lena when I was 16. She was the kind of girl every guy wanted. Pretty, confident, popular. The kind of girl who walked into a room and everyone noticed. I was just a shy kid, trying to figure out who I was. But when she looked at me, really looked at me, it was like the rest of the world disappeared. We didn't waste time. We started dating, and everything clicked. It felt like fate, like we were meant to be. We talked about our future all the time. Where we'd live, what our kids would be like, how we'd grow old and grumpy together, complaining about everything. Yeah, it was cliché, but it was our cliché. I honestly thought nothing could tear us apart. She was my first real love, my first everything. I believed in her. Hell, I believed in us. By 20, we were married. People said we were too young. Maybe they were right, but it felt like the right thing to do. We didn't care what anyone else thought. We were in love, and that was all that mattered. The first couple years were easy. I was just happy being around her. We didn't have much, but we had each other. I thought we had forever. But then, as time went on, things started to shift. I didn't realize it at first. Little things here and there. She'd come home late from work, her phone always on silent, and when she talked about her day, it just didn't add up. I shrugged it off for a while. It was probably just the stress of adult life. But deep down, I had this gnawing feeling something was off. I should have trusted that feeling, but I was too busy trying to keep everything perfect, trying to hold on to the life I thought I had. Then came the day she dropped the bombshell. I don't think I can do this anymore, she said, sitting across from me, looking at me like I was a stranger. She didn't even seem upset. It was like she was having a casual conversation about a bad movie we'd watched. But it wasn't casual. Not for me. At first, I thought she was joking. Maybe she was frustrated. Maybe it was just a phase. But no, she wasn't. The words kept coming. I've changed, Connor. I'm not happy. I didn't know how to react. I couldn't breathe. I begged her to talk about it, to fix it. I'd have done anything. But it didn't matter. Her mind was made up. And just like that, she was gone. I remember the day she left. It's burned into my memory. She packed a bag, didn't even cry, and walked out the door. I don't know if she thought it would be easy for me, or if she really didn't care, but that was the moment I lost myself. I didn't know who I was without her. She was everything. Or at least, that's what I told myself at the time. I spent the next year or so in a daze, trying to pick up the pieces of a life that felt shattered. I couldn't figure out how it happened, why it happened. But I had to move on, right? At least, that's what everyone kept telling me. Lena was the one who left, but somehow, it felt like I was the one who was punished. I thought time would heal the wounds, but every day that passed, the pain only seemed to deepen. And the worst part? I never got an answer. Not a real one. Just excuses. Just vague explanations. And then silence. Years went by, and I still couldn't forget her. But yesterday changed everything. I didn't expect to see her again. Hell, I didn't even know if I was ready. But there she was, walking into that coffee shop like nothing had ever happened. It's funny, you know? You think you've moved on. You think you're over it. But the moment you see the person who tore your world apart, everything comes rushing back, like a flood you can't stop. She wasn't alone. There was a guy with her. Young, fit, a little too perfect. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't jealous. Hell, I was furious. But more than that, I felt hurt. I wasn't the one sitting next to her anymore. I wasn't the one she was laughing with. The guy. He looked at her like she was the only thing in the world. And for a second, I was that guy again. The naive 16-year-old who thought he had it all. But I wasn't that guy anymore. Not even close. I didn't know what to do. Should I walk up to her? Should I confront her? Or should I just stand there and let the anger eat me alive? So, I did what I do best. I stood there. And I watched. She saw me, eventually. Her face changed. For a second, I thought I saw a flicker of something. Guilt? Regret? But she quickly covered it up, turning back to her new boyfriend, that picture-perfect guy who didn't know anything about her past. About our past. I wasn't sure what hurt more, seeing her with someone else or realizing she'd probably forgotten me completely. But that was just the beginning. I stood there for a while, just watching them. I didn't even know what to feel at that moment. Part of me wanted to run up and scream, "What the hell, Lena? How could you do this to me?" But I didn't. I couldn't. Something held me back. Maybe it was the years of trying to move past her, of convincing myself that I was over it. Or maybe it was just the fact that seeing her happy with someone else felt like a gut punch I couldn't take anymore. So, I just stood there like an idiot, pretending like I didn't care, while they laughed together, completely oblivious to the mess they were causing. She looked so comfortable with him, like she had it all together. Her hair was longer now, shinier, like she was trying to be this perfect put-together version of herself. She was wearing a bright smile, one I hadn't seen in a long time. The kind of smile that used to be mine. But the thing that stuck with me the most wasn't how happy she seemed. It was how cold she looked. I don't know why, but it hit me right in the chest. When we were together, she had this way of looking at me, almost like I was the most important person in the world. But now, I was just another face in the crowd. She wasn't even bothering to hide it. I turned and walked out of that coffee shop before my brain could catch up with my feet. I was pissed. Furious. I'd spent so long thinking that maybe, just maybe, she'd feel guilty for what she'd done. But no. She was just fine. She had moved on like I was nothing. The drive home was a blur. My hands were shaking so bad I had to pull over at one point. My heart felt like it was going to beat out of my chest, but it wasn't just anger. It was this overwhelming mix of betrayal and frustration. She had left me. She'd walked out of our life, and now, here she was, living some perfect little fairy tale while I was left holding all the broken pieces. I wasn't sure which hurt more, her leaving or seeing her with someone else, looking like she didn't even care. But that rage, I couldn't shake it. It was boiling inside me, and I knew I had to do something about it. I had spent years trying to be the bigger person, trying to let go of the past. But what had that gotten me? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And so, I did what anyone in my situation would do. I made a plan. Not a petty plan. Not some half-assed, get-back-at-her stunt. No, this had to be something bigger. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she had done to me. I wanted her to remember the guy she had walked away from. I wanted her to know that walking out on me hadn't been some easy decision. I wanted her to regret it. I wanted her to know she had messed with the wrong guy. I wasn't going to destroy her life. I wasn't that petty. But I was going to make sure she never, ever forgot me. The first thing I did was get rid of all the crap she left behind. Things I thought I might keep. Photos, mementos, love letters. All of it. It didn't matter anymore. I couldn't hold on to it. I shredded everything. It was like cutting ties with the past, with that version of me who was still holding on to some delusional hope that she might come back. Then, I started reaching out to people. Our old friends, the ones who stayed in touch after the divorce. I hadn't really talked to any of them in a while, but they were still around. The thing is, I knew some of them were still in contact with Lena, and I knew they didn't have a clue about how badly she'd hurt me. I didn't want to tell them the full story. Hell, I didn't even want to sound like some bitter ex-husband. But I did want to plant a little seed of doubt. Just enough to make them question her. I didn't have to say much. I'd drop a comment here and there. You know, Lena always had a way of keeping secrets, I'd say. Or, she was great at pretending everything was perfect, even when it wasn't. The little things, you know? Stuff that made them think twice about the person they thought they knew. And slowly, over time, I could see the cracks starting to form in the way they looked at her. But I wasn't done yet. I had bigger plans. I started showing up at places I knew she'd be. Nothing obvious, nothing crazy, but enough to make her see that I was still there. The gym, the cafe she loved, the park where we used to walk for hours on a Saturday afternoon. It wasn't like I was stalking her. I wasn't. But every time I saw her, I made sure she saw me too. I'd just stand there, watching her like a ghost. She'd notice eventually, I knew it. The worst part? I didn't even approach her. I just stood there, silently, waiting, letting her feel the weight of everything she'd done. Letting her know I wasn't going to fade into the background like some forgotten memory. And when she finally saw me, she didn't react the way I thought she would. No apology. No tears. Nothing. Just this cold, calculating look that made it clear she was just done with me. Like I was some chapter she had already closed. No regrets. And I guess that's when it hit me. She never looked back. But I couldn't just walk away. Not yet. I needed to finish what I started. It's funny how quickly things can spiral once you've made up your mind. At first, it was just small moves, getting rid of her stuff, planting little seeds of doubt. But after that moment in the coffee shop, I knew I had to step it up. Watching Lena laugh and chat with that guy like she had everything figured out, like she was living a new life without me in it. Well, it triggered something deep inside me. I wasn't going to let her just move on and pretend like nothing had happened. Like I didn't matter. I spent the next few days replaying the whole damn thing in my head. I'd see her face every time I closed my eyes, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being completely discarded. It's like she had tossed me aside like some old jacket she no longer needed. But I wasn't going to let that be the end of it. I knew exactly where to hit her. What would hurt the most? The first step was digging into her life, finding out what she was up to now. The more I learned, the angrier I got. Lena had always been good at pretending. She had this way of making everything look effortless, like she had it all together. But I knew her. I knew the cracks in that perfect little picture. I started paying attention to the small details. She'd mentioned a new job to me once, a marketing gig at some high-end firm. I remember her talking about it, how she was so proud of herself for landing the position. She'd always been ambitious, but I didn't think much of it at the time. Now, it was a weakness. I had a few connections, people I knew from our past, who could get me the information I needed. Nothing shady, nothing illegal, but enough to get a foot in the door. I found out the name of her boss, a guy she had mentioned a few times in passing. He seemed important, influential, and through a couple of old friends who still kept in touch with her, I learned about the people she worked with. I made some calls, sent a few discreet messages, nothing too obvious. I wanted to plant a few rumors. You know, the kind of whispers that don't seem malicious at first but slowly build until they can't be ignored. Did you hear Lena used to be married? I'd casually ask. Yeah, I've heard some interesting things about her past. I wasn't going to tell them everything. Just enough. I knew that people loved gossip, especially in a cutthroat workplace like hers. If I could get the right people talking, it would only be a matter of time before someone mentioned something to her. I wasn't trying to ruin her career, not exactly. But I wanted to make her uncomfortable. I wanted her to feel like every step she took in that perfect little world she'd built was shaky, like the foundation could crumble at any moment. But I wasn't just targeting her job. No, I had to hit her where it would really hurt. I couldn't get to her directly. She was too guarded now, too closed off. But her boyfriend? The guy she was seeing now? That was a different story. I knew she was still seeing him. The guy seemed like the kind of person who didn't care much about other people's pasts. He was younger than me, about 10 years, I'd guess, and he looked like the kind of guy who had it all. I'm sure he thought he was the one who'd saved her from me, from the life she'd outgrown. I couldn't help but resent the guy. He had no idea what Lena had put me through. He had no idea how she'd walked away from me without a second thought, like I was just some stepping stone in her path to something better. So I did a little digging on him, too. Nothing too extreme, but I learned enough. He worked in tech, was a bit of a rising star at his company, a real smooth talker. But there was a crack in his armor. I found out some things that, if he knew about Lena's past, would make him rethink his entire relationship with her. I knew the right way to deliver the message. I got in touch with a friend of mine, someone who had some dirt on this guy. Nothing criminal, just some little personal issues that wouldn't look good if they came to light. It wasn't enough to destroy him, but it was enough to make him second-guess everything. I passed the information along, making sure it got to the right hands. I didn't need to do the dirty work myself. I just needed to give him a little nudge in the right direction. Let him figure it out on his own. It was a waiting game now, watching everything unfold from the sidelines. I wasn't going to rush anything, but I could feel it. The tension, the slow burn of things about to change. And all the while, Lena had no idea. She had no idea what was coming, no clue that I was still out there, watching, waiting for her to realize the damage she'd caused. The best part was, I wasn't doing anything direct. I wasn't confronting her. I was just letting the pieces fall into place, knowing that eventually, she'd have to face the consequences of everything she'd done. But there was a moment, right before everything went into motion, where I started to question myself. Was I doing the right thing? I mean, what was I really after here? Revenge? Justice? Or was it just that I couldn't let go of what I thought we had? I didn't have the answers yet, but one thing was for sure. I wasn't going to let her just walk away without feeling the weight of what she had done. Not after everything. It's weird how things start to snowball once you set things in motion. At first, it was small, little rumors here and there, casually dropping hints, but it didn't take long before I started seeing results. I'd walk past places where Lena and her new boyfriend hung out, and I could feel the tension building. I wasn't being obvious. I wasn't stalking them or showing up uninvited, but I could see how people's perceptions of her were starting to shift. Little things, like the way her coworkers would give her a funny look when she'd walk into the office, or how the friends who once stood by her seemed a little less eager to hang out with her. It was like watching a slow-motion train wreck, and for once, I wasn't the one getting crushed beneath the wheels. I didn't let myself get too excited though. I couldn't. I had to keep my distance, keep my head clear. The last thing I wanted was to make myself vulnerable, to get caught up in the chaos. No, this was about Lena. It was always about Lena. I wanted her to see the mess she'd created, not just with me, but with everyone around her. I wanted her to feel the weight of everything she'd done. And then came the first real sign that my plan was working. I got a text one afternoon from an old friend of mine, Jake. He'd been one of those guys who'd kept in touch after the divorce, and we hadn't really talked much, but he was a good guy. He sent me a screenshot of a conversation he'd had with one of Lena's co-workers. It wasn't anything too outrageous, just a few lines, but it was enough to make me smile. "Did you hear what happened with Lena today?" the co-worker had said. "She got into this big argument with her boss. I don't know the details, but it sounded pretty bad. Apparently, Lena's reputation was starting to crack at work." I wasn't surprised. The rumors I'd planted had taken root, and now, the whispers about her past, about her relationship with me, and the way she just walked out without so much as a backward glance, were starting to surface. People were starting to wonder if they could really trust her. And I loved it. I loved knowing that she was finally starting to feel the pressure of everything she'd buried under that perfect smile. But it didn't stop there. A few days later, I heard from another friend, this time a guy named Dan who used to work with Lena. He'd been part of the same group that went out after work, hanging out at the bar, talking about life, gossiping. Dan wasn't someone I was particularly close with, but he was reliable. He'd been a bit of a sounding board for Lena back when we were together, always listening to her rants about work or me. This time though, he had a different story to tell. "She's losing it, man," he said when I met him for a quick drink. "I saw her last week, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. She's stressing out about something, and I don't think it's just work. She's been snapping at everyone, especially her boyfriend. There's something off about her." I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction at hearing that. The cracks were starting to show. Lena wasn't as untouchable as she used to be. She was unraveling, little by little. And the best part? She had no idea why. Now, I wasn't just watching from the sidelines anymore. I could see the way people were talking about her, the way her life was slowly starting to crumble. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. It was about this time that I decided to take the next step. I had a few more whispers to plant, a few more things to stir up. But I needed something big. Something that would make Lena realize just how much she had taken for granted. I found out through Dan that Lena and her boyfriend were having issues. Apparently, there had been some tension between them for a while. Something about her being distant, him feeling like she wasn't as invested as he was. At first, I thought it was just a rumor. Maybe it was just normal relationship stuff, but the more I heard, the more I realized it was serious. Lena's perfect little life wasn't as perfect as she thought it was. The thing was, I didn't need to do anything to make her boyfriend question things. All I needed was to push a little. Just enough to make him doubt her. So, I did what I knew best. I reached out. I'd been keeping tabs on her social media, mostly out of curiosity. Just seeing what she posted, who she was spending time with. I noticed a few things. Pictures of her and her boyfriend, sure, but there was something off about them. There was always something forced in the way they smiled. Like they were trying too hard to look happy. So, I messaged him. Nothing too direct, just enough to get him wondering. Hey man, I saw you with Lena the other day. Funny how she's always so perfect on the outside, but people don't always know what's going on behind closed doors, right? It wasn't anything concrete, but it planted a seed. And I knew, deep down, that it would get him thinking. It would make him question everything. I sat back and waited for the fallout. I was playing a dangerous game, but it didn't matter anymore. Lena had taken everything from me. My love, my trust, my damn dignity. And now, it was my turn to watch her burn. I knew I wasn't done yet. I had to make her feel the weight of everything she'd done. I wasn't going to stop until she understood exactly what it was like to be discarded, to be left behind without so much as an explanation. This was just the beginning, and I was ready to watch it all unfold. It's funny how much of a difference a few whispers can make. You plant a seed of doubt, and suddenly, the whole damn garden starts to wither. I could feel it. Things were starting to unravel for Lena, piece by piece. It wasn't just her job anymore. It wasn't just the whispers at work or her boyfriend starting to question everything. No, this was bigger. She was starting to crack, and I was sitting back, watching it all happen like I was watching some bad TV drama. But the difference was, this wasn't fiction. This was real. It had been a few weeks since I sent that message to her boyfriend. And while I didn't hear anything directly from him, I could tell things were changing. One afternoon, I got a message from Dan. He didn't say much, just a couple of lines, but it was enough to confirm everything I was hoping for. Hey man, I don't know what you're doing, but you're getting to her. Her boyfriend called me today. Sounds like they're on the verge of breaking up. She's pulling away, and he's pissed. Says she's been acting weird. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. It felt good. It felt damn good. I wasn't some angry ex out for petty revenge anymore. No, I was making her feel the weight of what she'd done. I was forcing her to confront the fact that the perfect life she thought she was building without me wasn't so perfect after all. But as the days went on, I started to realize something that stopped me in my tracks. I was getting too close to the edge. I'd always told myself that I wasn't going to be one of those guys who lets anger control him, but here I was. I was doing things I hadn't imagined myself doing. I was playing with people's lives, using their weaknesses to my advantage. I wasn't just making Lena uncomfortable anymore. I was ruining things for her in ways I couldn't take back. The thing is, when you've been hurt as badly as I had been, it's hard to stop. The anger keeps feeding itself. Every little crack in her perfect world felt like a victory, and every time I saw her flinch, I felt like I was finally winning. She was starting to feel like the person who walked away from me. She was starting to feel how I'd felt for years. But it wasn't just about revenge anymore. That's the thing. Somewhere along the way it became something else. It was around that time that I got an unexpected call. Lena. I wasn't sure why she was calling me. Maybe she'd finally realized what I'd been doing, or maybe she was just desperate for closure. I hadn't heard her voice in years, and even hearing her name on the screen of my phone made my heart skip a beat. I hesitated. I almost didn't pick up, but I had to. Connor. Her voice sounded different than I remembered. Lighter, maybe. Maybe she thought we could just talk like it was nothing. I could hear her trying to sound calm, but there was a hint of nervousness. Yeah, I said, my voice flat. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. I just wanted to check in. You know, see how you're doing. Her words felt rehearsed. Fake, even. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me like she used to. I'm doing fine. You? Everything going well in your little perfect life. There was a pause on the other end. She must have been taken aback. I didn't care. She deserved to hear it. Connor, don't. She cut herself off, like she was trying to find the right words. But there was nothing left to say. Look, I don't know what you're doing, but you need to stop. You're causing problems for me. For everyone. For a split second, I felt a twist of satisfaction. She was finally acknowledging it. She was finally feeling the consequences of her actions. Problems, I said, leaning back in my chair. You mean the kind of problems you caused when you left me without a word? The kind of problems you never gave a damn about? Sorry, Lena. You don't get to play the victim here. She was silent for a long moment. It was almost like she was trying to come up with an excuse, a justification for everything. But the thing was, there was no excuse. Not anymore. I didn't want things to end like this, Connor, she said, her voice soft now. Almost apologetic. But I wasn't buying it. Then why'd you leave me? I shot back. Why'd you leave me like I was nothing? You think I don't remember how you walked out that door? No explanation. No second thought. You moved on like I didn't exist. And now, you're calling me because you're having problems? You don't get to have a say in how I handle this. Her voice cracked. Just a little. I was young. I didn't know what I wanted back then. I made mistakes. But I've changed. I'm not that person anymore. I let out a dry laugh. You think I care about the new Lena? I don't. I care about the one who destroyed me. The one who left me for a life I didn't even get to be part of. There was a long, heavy silence. I don't know what she expected me to say. Maybe she thought I'd just forgive her. Maybe she thought I'd fall for that voice of hers, the one that used to make my heart skip. But it wasn't going to happen. You wanted me to stop, right? I said after a minute, my voice colder than I intended. Well, Lena, you better start looking in the mirror. Because everything that's falling apart around you, that's not my doing. That's all on you. I hung up before she could respond. I knew what she was trying to do. She was trying to get me to feel bad. She was trying to make me the villain in this whole thing. But I wasn't the villain. She was. She had been from the start. And now, she was starting to realize that. I wasn't done yet. Far from it. But at least for now, I knew one thing. She was starting to feel it. She was starting to feel the weight of everything she'd done. And that was just the beginning. After that call, things started to spiral faster than I thought they would. Lena's words kept ringing in my ears, but not for the reason you might think. I wasn't having some big emotional breakdown, and I wasn't sitting there wondering if I'd gone too far. No, I was more pissed than I'd ever been. She was still trying to play the victim. She still thought that after all these years, I was just going to forgive her and let her walk back into my life like nothing happened. It wasn't even the audacity that pissed me off the most. It was the way she tried to make me feel like I was the one who had wronged her. That's when I decided to do something I hadn't planned on. I was going to make sure that she understood the full weight of her mistakes. Not just with me, but with everyone around her. I knew I'd gotten into her head with all the whispers, with all the little games I'd been playing behind the scenes. But I needed one final blow, something that would make her realize she wasn't the one who got away unscathed. It wasn't enough to destroy her reputation at work or break up her relationship. I needed to pull back the curtain, let everyone see exactly who she really was, who she had been, and I had the perfect way to do it. It all started with her family. I hadn't seen them in years, not since the divorce. Lena's parents had always been kind to me. Hell, I'd spent holidays at their house, had dinner with them like they were my own family. But after everything went down, they took her side. They never fully understood why I was so hurt. They just chalked it up to growing pains and youthful mistakes. But I hadn't forgotten. I didn't think I could ever forget how they looked at me, as if I was the one who had broken their little girl. The thing is, I knew Lena. I knew how she spun things to make herself look good. I knew the version of the story she told her family, the one where I was the bad guy, and she was the innocent one who had been misunderstood. I decided it was time they got the full story. The truth. I found out where they were spending Thanksgiving that year. At her aunt's house, about an hour outside the city. I didn't plan on showing up uninvited. I wasn't stupid enough for that. But I knew the perfect way to get in touch with her parents. A little message, a little reminder of what Lena had been hiding from them all these years. I wasn't going to lie. I wasn't going to make anything up. I just reminded them of the person Lena used to be, the person they seemed to have forgotten. Hey, I know it's been a long time, but I thought you should know something. I don't know if Lena ever told you the full story about what happened between us. But she never told you everything. She never told you about the affairs, the lies, or how she left me with no explanation. She never told you how she ran from everything when things got tough, leaving me to pick up the pieces of our shattered life. You deserve to know the truth. It was a simple message, nothing too dramatic, but I knew it would get under her skin. I didn't need to make her family hate her, I just needed them to see the cracks in the shiny facade she'd built. I wanted them to know that I wasn't some guy sitting in the corner, letting her walk all over me. I wasn't going to be the villain anymore. The thing that shocked me the most? Her parents didn't respond right away. In fact, I didn't hear from them for over a week. I almost thought maybe I'd crossed a line. But then, out of nowhere, I got a message from her mom. It was short, simple, and cold. I'm sorry, Connor. We had no idea. We'll be in touch. It wasn't much, but it was enough to let me know that Lena's perfect little world was starting to come apart. She had been lying to her own family about everything. And now they knew. It wasn't long after that when I got wind of her breakup. I heard it through the grapevine, of course. Her boyfriend had found out about the things I'd told him. The rumors. The lies. And he left her. Just like that. He couldn't handle the secrets anymore. He couldn't handle knowing that she'd been with someone else, someone like me, who had been left in the dark about so much. I didn't need to reach out to him again. He had already figured it out on his own. I had mixed feelings about the breakup. On one hand, I was glad to see her get a taste of her own medicine. On the other, part of me felt sorry for her. Because now she was truly alone. The boyfriend who had swooped in to save her from her past was gone. The friends who had stood by her? They were starting to pull away, too. And her family? Well, they were still in shock, trying to process the truth. Lena was isolated. And for the first time I could see it. I could see the loneliness creeping into her life, the realization that maybe, just maybe, she had burned every bridge she'd ever had. And that's when it really hit me. She wasn't going to come back. Not in any way I had imagined. She wasn't going to show up at my door with an apology, begging for a second chance. She wasn't going to realize she made a mistake and want to fix things. No. She was too proud for that. She'd moved on, convinced she had nothing left to prove. But now, she was paying the price. She was living the consequences of her actions. And that was enough for me. I didn't need her to beg. I didn't need her to feel sorry. I just needed her to feel the same emptiness I had felt for all those years. I had won. But, damn, it wasn't nearly as sweet as I thought it would be. I'd love to say that after everything, I felt this overwhelming sense of satisfaction, like I'd finally gotten what I deserved. That I was walking around with my chest puffed out, knowing that Lena was feeling the weight of all the crap she'd done to me. But honestly, it wasn't like that at all. Don't get me wrong, I could tell she was hurting. She had no boyfriend now, no perfect little life to escape into. Her friends, her family, they were all starting to see her for who she really was. And sure, I felt a strange satisfaction watching it all fall apart. But the more I watched, the less I cared. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like emptiness. What the hell had I actually won? What was it all for? I had spent so much time thinking about how she'd betrayed me, how she'd left me with nothing, that I'd lost sight of what mattered most, my own life. I wasn't thinking about what I wanted anymore. I was just obsessed with making her feel bad. But the thing is, all the whispers and the rumors and the little games I played didn't fill the hole she'd left in me. It didn't bring back the years I'd wasted, the dreams I'd let slip away. It was like I'd been so focused on tearing down the life she'd built without me that I didn't realize I was still stuck in the wreckage of the life we had. The life I had built with her. I kept going through the motions, but something in me felt hollow. The more Lena struggled, the more I realized it didn't make me feel any better. There was no joy in her misery. I wasn't the kind of person who thrived on that. I thought I was, but I wasn't. One evening, a few weeks after everything had gone down, I was at the gym. I was running on the treadmill, just trying to get some damn focus back in my life. My mind was racing with all the stuff I'd been doing, all the planning, all the steps I'd taken to make sure Lena knew what it felt like to be discarded. And yet, there I was, sweating it out, not feeling any lighter. Then, out of nowhere, I saw her. Not Lena. God no. It wasn't her. But someone who reminded me of her. A woman on the treadmill next to mine. She had the same blonde hair, the same sharp features. She was smiling, laughing with the person next to her like she didn't have a care in the world. And for a moment, I stopped running. I didn't even realize it at first, but my heart was pounding in my chest. It was like I was seeing a ghost, but not one from my past. It was a reminder of the life I had lost. A reminder that I was still caught up in this endless loop of anger and betrayal, but that life, was no longer mine. It had slipped away. It hit me like a damn freight train. I wasn't going to be stuck in this bitterness forever. I couldn't be. I had spent so much time trying to make Lena feel like she owed me something, trying to make her regret leaving me, that I hadn't realized I was the one who was still stuck in the past. I was the one who had been frozen in time, waiting for something that wasn't ever going to come. I finished my workout, showered, and left the gym, but I couldn't shake that feeling. It was like I had been so focused on revenge and anger that I forgot the most important thing. Moving on. So, I did what I should have done years ago. I deleted her number. I deleted all the old texts, the photos, the things that kept me hanging on to the ghost of who we used to be. I stopped thinking about all the ways I could tear her life apart and started thinking about what I could do to rebuild my own. The thing is, even though Lena had caused so much pain, even though I had every right to be angry, I realized something. It wasn't about her anymore. It never should have been. It was about me. I spent the next few weeks doing things for myself. Stuff that had nothing to do with Lena or the wreckage she left behind. I took up a few new hobbies I'd never had time for when we were together. I reached out to friends I'd lost touch with over the years. And slowly, I started to feel like myself again. Like the guy who had been swallowed up in a relationship that ended, not because of who he was, but because of who she had become. The hardest part? Accepting that I couldn't change what happened. I couldn't rewind time and make things right. I couldn't force Lena to feel the pain I'd felt or make her regret her choices. She was out of my life now for good, and the best thing I could do was let her go. And that's the part that stung the most. Letting go. I didn't need to watch her life crumble anymore. I didn't need to see her fail. I didn't need to hear the gossip or dig through her past to make her feel bad. The truth was, she was gone from my life. And maybe, just maybe, that was the way it was always supposed to be. It wasn't the revenge I thought I wanted. It wasn't the satisfaction I'd imagined when I started this whole thing. But in the end, it was the only way to heal. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of the past, trying to make someone who didn't care about me feel my pain. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. And you know what? It was enough. It was more than enough. I was moving on. And that, after all this time, was the victory I'd been looking for. It's strange, how much things change when you least expect it. One minute, you're tangled up in all this bitterness and anger, and the next, you wake up and realize that it doesn't have to be that way anymore. For the first time in a long time, I woke up without that tight knot in my chest, without that constant weight on my shoulders. I wasn't over it. Not completely. But I was moving forward. And that was enough. I guess I always thought that to heal, you had to have some big, dramatic moment of closure. Like I needed Lena to come to me and apologize, or I needed some massive, life-changing event to make everything okay again. But I learned that healing doesn't work like that. Sometimes, it's the small, quiet steps. It's letting go of the things that are holding you back, whether it's the past, the anger, or the need for some grand form of justice. I won't lie. There were still moments when I thought about Lena. When I wondered what she was doing, if she ever thought about me, if she regretted walking away. But those moments got quieter, softer, until they faded into the background of my life. I wasn't carrying her with me anymore. I wasn't carrying that damn weight around anymore. I started dating again, not seriously at first, just meeting new people, seeing where things went. The first few dates were awkward, and I wasn't even sure what I was looking for, but I learned something important. I wasn't comparing them to Lena anymore. I wasn't looking for someone to replace her, because I'd finally realized something. I didn't need her to complete me. I was fine on my own. I was better off. And that, more than anything, was the most freeing realization I'd had in years. It wasn't about her anymore. It wasn't about revenge or trying to make her regret what she did. It was about me. It always had been. A few months went by, and things just fell into place. I found a new job that I liked. I started working out more, eating healthier, getting my life back on track. Slowly, but surely, I started feeling like the guy I used to be, before all the heartache, before the lies, before Lena walked out. I ran into some of our old friends one night at a bar. It was unexpected, and honestly, a little awkward at first. They'd all heard the rumors about what happened with Lena, but I didn't really talk about it much. They asked if I was doing okay, and I said I was. I could tell they were all a little uncomfortable, but I didn't care. I wasn't the broken guy they used to know. I wasn't the guy who let Lena's departure define me. We had a few beers, talked about old times, and laughed about stupid stuff we used to do. It felt good. For the first time in a long time, it felt like I was truly moving forward, not just getting by. And then, out of nowhere, I got a text. It was from Lena. I stared at my phone for a long time before I even considered opening it. I wasn't sure what she wanted. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to just delete it and forget it ever happened. But curiosity got the better of me. I opened the message. I know we haven't talked in a while, but I just wanted to say that I'm sorry. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me for what I did, but I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. I hurt you, and I know that. I just wanted to acknowledge it. You deserve that. There it was. The apology. The one I never expected. The one I never needed anymore. I stared at the message for a long time, reading it over and over. And then, for the first time in years, I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel hurt. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt calm. I typed a quick response. Thank you for saying that. I'm doing well. I hope you're okay too. I didn't need to say anything more. There was nothing left to say. I didn't need her to fix anything. I didn't need her to make it right. The truth was, I had already moved on. She wasn't part of my life anymore, and that was okay. I turned off my phone and went back to enjoying my night with friends. And that, I think, was the final piece of the puzzle. I had spent so much of my life fighting to hold on to something that wasn't even there anymore. I had wanted revenge, I had wanted closure, but in the end, what I really needed was the chance to let go and find peace within myself. I realized then that the real victory wasn't about making her pay for what she did. It wasn't about watching her world crumble or trying to get back at her. It was about finding a way to be okay without her. Because in the end, that's what truly matters.